Hello and welcome to episode 98 of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by Pittsburgh's finest, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you today?
I feel pretty good. I appreciate how genuine that seemed when you asked me just now. Sometimes I get the feeling that you're being sarcastic, but this time I felt like you meant it. You faked it really well.
I've never meant anything more in my entire life. And I'm also not...
Well, now that I believe.
So we got joined by a former intern today who's like now a big deal.
Big deal guy. He still calls us back now. That's pretty good.
He does. Yeah. I think he's like, he reflexively is like, I better get back to them because they might have something I need to do in a timely manner. And then he's like, wait a minute. I'm important. I don't need to do that anymore. We are talking about Buddy Deshler, trumpet player for Dallas Brass, and the one of the owners and founders of Fred Brass and Tidewater Brass, and the entrepreneurial student. And he's got a lot of things going on, as you're about to hear in this episode.
Yeah, I was really he's a remarkable. I can say nice things about him because he's already hung up.
He is not
a remarkable young guy, and he's 27. So everybody's a young guy to me.
Right.
Getting more and more on that list
with all the things he's got going on. He's absolutely young. I mean, there are people who win gigs by then, but there's not usually.
Yeah, his career's 10 years old already.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been doing stuff for a long time. So it was really. I'm very, very excited. I hope that a bunch of people download this one. He's not a name that tons and tons of people know, but he's done more than many of our colleagues have that are closer to my age.
Yep.
And he talks about being organized and what it took to kind of get all of these things started, and a really cool story about the humongous favor his mom did for him in life.
Yep. Yeah, really good. And also, the bonus episode ended up being absolutely priceless. It was a good one already. We were spent our extra 15 minutes. The Brass Junkies, if you're brand new, you don't know this, but is every other week, every other Tuesday, we release an episode. And in the Tuesdays in between, we release a bonus episode to our Patreon patrons, which you can become a patron at patreon.com/thebrassjunkies. That is for as little as $1 per episode, and that's only the actual episode. So that's like $26 whopping a year. You can get access to all of the back bonus episodes with a long list of people. But this one was, we had a hilarious thing that went wrong that he shared with us in a recent Dallas Brass performance. And we talked about a few things. We were having a lot of fun. And then I said to Buddy, in general, the format for the bonus episode is that we talk to the guest for another 10 to 15 minutes. Then Lance and I will talk about our thoughts briefly for the episode, and then we wrap. It's anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes long usually. And this one, I said, signing off, I said, well, thank you so much for your time, Buddy. It's really been a pleasure. And then there was silence. There was absolute silence. There was no answer. And then Lance was like, wait, what? Where'd he go? And then he was still showing up on the screen as being there. And we always shut off our cameras just to help the connectivity, just in case somebody has Wi-Fi that's intermittent, we shall say. And so anyway, Buddy, it turned out, and then Lance, after a minute, we started talking about him, saying wow, we don't know if he can actually hear us or not. And then Lance said, Buddy, if you can hear us, turn on your camera. And then his camera turned on, but his mic still didn't work. So he was sitting there listening to us as we started saying really mean things about him, since we love him. So it was,
and he's a patron too.
He is a
former
patron,
intern,
yes.
Awesome dude. And this just shows you we've been something wrong with us.
Yeah, there is. It was, but it was really funny. He was laughing hysterically as we were saying things about him that were not true, that he couldn't defend himself, and yet he was listening to it. And then finally he unplugged his headphones, and then he could actually speak. So that was quality radio, if I may say so myself. So again, patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, and you can hear that. If you're listening the day this was released, that will be out in exactly 1 week, and we are cruising towards episode 100, which we have a huge guest for episode 100, and it is easily the most intense and I think incredible episode of Brass Junkies that we have done. We have already recorded it. We just recorded it yesterday, actually, but really good stuff. A legend. So
can't wait for you to hear it.
Yeah, it's just really good.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yep. So episode 100 is a round number, as they say. So we got a really big guest. So, all right. Well, I think without further ado, let us get to the conversation that we had with Dallas Brass's Buddy Deshler. Today on the Brass Junkies, we have a trumpet player, we have a spiritual leader, and fashion icon who is a former intern of Pedal Note Media, Buddy Deshler.
Former?
Buddy.
Well, that explains a lot.
No wonder he doesn't keep answering our emails.
Crap.
Buddy Deshler, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. You don't sound as spiritual as you usually do right now. You sound a little sarcastic.
I'm 40% excited for this interview and then 60% concerned because I haven't been on the phone with Lance in a while. So who knows?
You're welcome.
Who knows what will happen?
To be clear, it's not that he's not worried about being on the phone with me. He's just been on the phone with me a bunch recently. Yeah, so there's a callus there. Yeah, exactly. He's just kind of like, what's Hitz going to say that he hasn't said in the last month? So, which, you have a point. So ask my students. I say like 3 things. So it's just sometimes I translate them into like French or Portuguese, so it sounds like I'm saying different stuff, but it's all the same stuff. So, Buddy, tell people why we would want you to be interviewed. Like, why are you important?
Because everyone else was busy, I guess.
Well, there is that.
No, I don't know. We've known each other for a while through schooling and then through my internship with Pedal Note Media. And then, you guys have been there on the sidelines cheering and I think cheering for the development of my career.
I did at one point pull a Mike Tomlin where I just stepped out onto the field and actually tripped someone who was also going for a gig you were going for. But, So.
Yep.
You had it coming.
So you were there for the development of both the Fredericksburg Brass Institute and the Tidewater Brass Institute,
Name dropper.
Putting together my entrepreneurial student lecture, being there, giving advice for when I started going on the road with Dallas Brass, and then, just being an advocate for all the things that I've been trying to do with my career and make my impression in the musical world. So other than that, I have no idea why.
Lance, what do we want to talk about first? He's got lots of interesting stuff going on.
Well, it's been a long time since we've talked about Fred Brass. You mentioned it, so let's talk about it. What is it? How did it get started? What's happening now?
So Fred Brass is a week-long summer chamber festival in my hometown of Fredericksburg, Virginia. We've hosted both of you guys for that, which has been awesome. It was founded in 2013 with Austin Boyer, who was also an intern for Pedal Note Media.
Name's not ringing a bell.
Oh, man.
He's the guy that got married and quit, right? Yeah, no, it's ringing a bell.
Whatever.
Whatever.
Nothing to see here.
And his wife. But he's
Fell
living
in
in
love
Boston.
and all that stuff. Whatever.
So we did that in 2013, where we have set faculty such as myself that are coaching different chamber groups and large brass ensembles. But then we have different guest artists that have come in each day to do a master class and seminar and then a recital that we have as part of the Fred Brass Summer Concert Series. So it's a week of instruction, a week of concerts, a week of fun and learning.
And I mean, Lance and I are by far the 2 biggest names you've ever had in there, but why don't you tell them about some of the other names?
So we've had Marty Hackelman for French horn. We've had Demondre Thurman for euphonium. We've had Maniacal 4 for trombone. There's been a lot of great a lot of great people. Jose Cibaja came for trumpet. Rex Richardson has come for trumpet. Derek Fenstermacher has come for tuba. So there's so many people have been a part of the festival, which has been just an amazing thing to kind of look back on and saying all these people came to my hometown and were teaching young brass players just all of this stuff that they've never been exposed to, either hearing it or on their instruments or just hearing it pedagogically. So it's really great.
How old were you when you founded it?
I think like when we were, well, because you know about Fred Brass Zero that we talked about, and it's been on an episode of The Entrepreneurial Musician.
Which was a really good talk that, you surprised me. So I owed you a favor, so I put you on there, but it's really good. We will link to that episode in the show notes.
And that was when we were 18. It was after our freshman year of college that we tried to put it together.
So what the hell possessed you to try and put together a festival at age 18? Like I did a lot of stuff at 18 and none of it was productive. So what made you do that?
Well, I think the biggest thing was after the very first semester of college, our like friend group, which was Kenneth Johnson, who's still on trombone faculty, Amy Loudon, Austin Boyer, and myself. We would come back home either for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and just say, this is all the stuff that I've learned at school, because it was already just way beyond what we were already used to and exposed to because we were in high school. So like hearing our teachers, learning about new players, particular like solo pieces and other artists. So we would just come back and say, this is what I learned. This is what I learned here. I've kind of figured this thing out. Let me see if I can teach it to you like my teacher taught me. So we were already obsessed with just exposing each other to what we've learned musically. So then we wanted to do that for Fredericksburg. We wanted to do that for young musicians that were still in high school. So it was, later in that spring semester that we tried to put together a week, well, not even a week-long camp, because at that time it was just one day each week. It was like every Saturday we would come in for Fred Brass just to talk about new things, chamber music, solo pieces, lessons, things like that.
Pretty awesome. So what have been the biggest challenges in maintaining that thing?
In maintaining Fred Brass?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You mentioned about the callus. We've been told no so many times because, when starting something new, you kind of have to hear that a lot until it's normal as far as the ideas that we come up with, the people we're trying to bring in, getting people on board with it, marketing and stuff. So we face a lot of the challenges that I think that you would assume as far as getting the word out, getting students enrolled, raising money to pay for the faculty and to pay for the artists. But, it's just been, I think, one step backwards, but two steps forwards each time. So we are making progress every year. And now what started as 3 faculty and 3 artists or 4 artists, I think, the very first year, and 10 students has turned into 11 faculty and 8 days from 5 days, 4 days of artists, and 40 plus participants. So
what are your plans? What's next?
Well, actually, I think, at least maybe Andrew knows this, maybe you guys have seen, but Fred Brass 19 is actually going to be hosted at University of Mary Washington this summer.
Very cool.
And then Tidewater Brass, which was the second festival that we created last year, is actually going to be at Old Dominion University.
And so, since you mentioned it, what are the main differences between the two? Is it just the location, or is the structure the same, or what? How do these two festivals differ?
They are basically structured the same, but it's basically just taking it on the road essentially, which is just putting it in new locations in Virginia. So the other director after Austin stepped down is Dakota Corbliss, and he's been our horn faculty since 2014 for Fred Brass. So Fredericksburg is my hometown. Virginia Beach, which is where Tidewater Brass is Dakota's hometown. So the location has changed. We keep a lot of the same faculty, but for Tidewater, for euphonium, we have Dr. Timothy Shade. He's an amazing jazz trombone player, great euphonium player, as well as the He's currently the director of bands at Wichita State, so he's our ensemble conductor. But we have new artists, and because the weeks are different, we often have, and the location is different, we have different participants, but there are like bundle deals to be a part of both festivals. But same business structure, same model, but new artists and new location.
So you mentioned one more thing in the earlier talk, which was your entrepreneurial student lectures. So let's talk about that, because what I want to kind of get out on the table is all the stuff that you do, and then talk about how you balance that, how you prioritize things, how you kind of organize your days. But right. for now, talk about the entrepreneurial student lectures.
Well, I first started that, I think it was going on like 4 years ago or something. And after working with you guys, and you kind of saw like this kid has this entrepreneurial mindset. Like they're just not obsessed with mouthpieces and high notes and solos and that. Like they were interested in like how to cultivate a musical career from an earlier age. So I was always really curious as to why things worked, why things didn't work. So I created this lecture, The Entrepreneurial Student, because that's what I was being referred to as. Was, yes, I was a student, yes, I was in school, but I had this entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. So then I started talking about and going to schools and talking about what I was doing, like the things that Buddy Deshler specifically was doing. And I did it at 2 schools, and then I realized that this is way bigger than this. This is way bigger than me. Like, I'm not the entrepreneurial student. The entrepreneurial student is basically this mindset. It's this lifestyle.
Are we going to just let it lay there that he just referred to himself in third person, Andrew? We're just going to move on and not comment on that?
I have a hard time.
Slid that in.
I have a
Lance
time.
LaDuke has a hard time with that.
Yeah. No, that's fair. We can make a pit stop for this. Sure.
Andrew Hitz has a hard time busting on spiritual leaders. So, it's like, because you usually don't, it's like trying to compete with a kid or an animal on stage, like you're going to lose, So anyway, continue, Buddy Deshler.
Thanks, Andrew Hitz.
Are we just going to let that lie there? I like it.
So basically...
Hey, wait, hold on. For anybody who hasn't listened way back in the day, we had a standing bit in the intro of the. I think this was the very beginning of when the intros became like 25 to 30 minutes long. Was when Lance had a standing bit where every week or every episode I would ask Lance. I would say, "Hey, Lance, where's Austin and Buddy? Like, why aren't they on the call with us?" And then Lance would
I forgot that. That was pretty funny.
Lance would make something up, which, as you could imagine, was filled with jackassery. And yeah.
Well, and you know what? We were supposed to. It's funny that you say that, because we were supposed to have Austin on today as well, but he had an appointment. It's really hard to get this appointment. There is one guy on the Eastern Seaboard that is good at flossing cats. And so you're booked like 6 months in advance. And so when that time pops up, you got to jump. So, Austin, we miss you.
He did tell me that he feels terrible about missing the call.
Catflosserjedi.net is that guy's website. So, yeah, he's really great. He solves a problem most of us don't even know that we have. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, he has to educate his customers first. So what were we talking about?
Who knows at this point?
How the entrepreneurial student lectures came to be.
There you.
Yeah, I do also want to say, like, I don't know, I can't see like how long we've been talking, but this is a lot longer than I thought I would last before, getting busted by you guys. So.
Well, we need you to focus, man. We're trying to get you to talk about the entrepreneurial student, so please stay on task here, man.
Sure, yeah, this is on me.
Jeez.
So I put together a lecture basically on different attributes and characteristics that an entrepreneurial student might possess, like being creative, like just going out there and doing it, taking action steps rather than just planning. So because this is, coming from somebody that's in the midst of doing all these things, that is still young, that even when I was doing it was still a student, it got a lot of attention. So it's been presented, I think, at like a dozen universities at this point. It's
Okay, so here's a question, and it's shockingly a serious question. What is it about your personality that you don't seem afraid to fail, and you don't seem afraid to have people tell you, no, you're not old enough to do this, you're not qualified to do this, you just sort of have taken this amazing initiative, and you've started 3, 4, 5, 6 different things. Is this a thing that you have had with you since childhood? Like, where do you think that comes from? Is it from is it nature, nurture? Like, what kinds of factors went into this notion that you're going to take initiative and make things happen? See, there was no punchline there. You didn't know what to do with
Buddy
that.
is completely disarmed. That was
stymied him.
Actually a probing and intellectually
showing a dog a Rubik's Cube
question.
I think it does stems from a few sources. One is that, and we've talked about this before, Andrew, but everybody has the ability to think creatively. Like, everyone is able to come up with ideas. Everyone is allowed to come up with ideas, but it's that extra step of actually doing it that people often stop, and it's thinking of what actually hinders them from doing it. I think if we were to go full, Sigmund Freud, kind of going back, my mother would let me succeed and fail on my own. So if I had an idea, unless it was I'm going to light, this thing on fire, other than that, but as far as ideas that I came up with and projects that I had, she kind of would let me run with it and succeed and fail on my own, and then recap later. So it was sort of I want to turn our garage into a music rehearsal room. And she's like, cool, we're going to have to clean out the garage. And then I'm like, well, I want to have a yard sale then to clean out the garage. And she's like, great. So then I had to put together my own yard sale. Then I had to turn the garage into a rehearsal space. And I also remember her telling me this story once of me waiting until the very last second to do a project. That was in elementary school or something. And if I didn't pass, then I would fail the class. And I waited until the very last minute to do it. So I did it, and then the teacher gave me a passing grade. And my mother came in, it's I hear you passed my son. Yeah, he really needed, to get that. And she was like, you should have failed him because he waited until the very last second to do that project. So I think that kind of stuff has something to do with it, is that I do have very supportive parents and very supportive family, but they kind of just let me see what happens whenever I put these ideas together. So a lot of my big decisions, like transferring schools, switching from a music ed degree to a performance degree, they kind of trusted my instincts that way.
Cool.
Well, I think there's another key component there too, which is that it's one thing to just say, sure, go empty the garage and go have a yard sale. And there's another thing to follow through and say, well, what did you learn in this? And how might this have been different? And what would you have done different? And that sort of, it's the follow-up. It's, you have the idea, and then you do the idea, and then you reflect on the idea. And then if you're in a cycle, you need to, if you want to reiterate this thing, well, then you need to retool it and figure out, well, the next time I'm going to do X, Y, Z. So then It sounds like you had, a bunch of little mini experiments in trying to run projects of one sort or another before you even launched into this. So you'd had, 10 or 12 successes and failures before you even thought about Fred Brass. So it makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of interesting. What's your mom? Did she stay home with you, or did she have a job? What was her career?
She's a physical therapist. So she, was working, but she was done by the school day essentially, or shortly after the school day.
So I want to hear, very interesting. I want to hear in a second about the exercise that you do about showing students that they have creative ideas, because I think that's a really cool exercise. But first, we are going to very briefly hear about our dear friends at Duquesne University.
Duquesne University and the Mary Pappert School of Music are sponsors of the show, and we couldn't be happier. If you want to know about the wonderful goings-on, the sorts of groups you can participate in, the fantastic teachers, most of whom play with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and or I guess I could say all of them are either affiliated with the Pittsburgh Symphony, or the River City Brass. Then click on the link in the show notes below, and you'll be taken to a page specifically designed for our fans and listeners, so you can find out all about the goings on there. And very, very special thanks. I'm pulling up the list. Thank you, Russell. I don't remember if I did this one or not, but I'm going to do it again because it's a winner. Very special thanks to Jim. Take it easy, baby. I worked all day and my feet just feel like lead. Nova. AKA Jim. Drink, drink, drink. Oh, fiddle-dee dink Nova. AKA Bossa Nova, baby.
All right. So, buddy,
Yeah.
let's do an awkward segue back into real content now. Talk about the exercise that you do in your presentation, the entrepreneurial student, that shows students that that everyone has ideas.
So I put together this document called the TES, the Entrepreneurial Student Event Planner, and you can actually download it on my website under the Entrepreneurial Student tab. But basically, what I do with this document in the lecture is I have students fill out different description boxes like a name of an event, the reason for an event, possible hurdles, the resources you have, basically putting on a project, whether it be like a specific event or a more grand product. So I split everyone into groups, and they have 7 minutes to fill in the boxes to the best of their ability. And this is like the first activity in the lecture, which I think is also important because it breaks the status quo of what a lecture really is, which is just the guest person talking at people for an extended period of time. So getting students to, split up, to talk amongst themselves, to think creatively. And because it's at a college, this is often when people start to get silly, but more so they get creative, and then they have a little bit less fear, whether they're just trying to be funny or they actually have these ideas. And then I have one person come up and I have them present their product or their event to everybody. And it's always a good time, but I do it for a lot of reasons, because then it works on their public speaking. It works on getting them used to thinking and jotting down their own ideas more than they probably have. They get used to being advocates of their ideas. But then it just puts it out into the world. It becomes that much more real. So whatever idea people are thinking of, I bet everyone listening has some sort of idea in their head of something that they think would either be cool to do, or that they're planning to do, or that they wish they could do. And then it puts it out there. It makes it that much more real. And then I ask some questions about, okay, what are some ways to get revenue from this, or, basically just to tweak it a little bit. But then I present to the rest of the lecture group. I said, who here has heard something today that they would like to be a part of? And pretty much everyone raises their hand. And then I say, who here thinks that they could support this in some way, whether it be attending, whether it be putting them in contact with a particular person or organization, and every hand goes up. And then it just shows people that what they have thought of has value, has worth, has meaning, and has possibility. Because this is just a very small group of people that attended the lecture at this particular university, in this particular state, in this particular coast, in this country. And you already have that much more support. And it only took 7 minutes. Ends up being a pretty powerful thing.
Do you give bonus points if they refer to themselves in the third person in the presentation?
I do. Yeah, they get points, but just like whose line is anyway, the points don't matter. So.
The points don't matter.
Well, it's also a way for you to sort out where the trumpet players are. So I'm going to put a link to this, the TES.
You can put mirrors around the room, too. So
yeah.
They're all staring at them.
I'm looking at the event planner right now. It's fantastic, actually.
Yeah,
this is a really nice way to organize this. And actually, to talk up your website a little bit more, your the entrepreneurial student recommended checklist is really good as well. You want to explain what that is?
So yeah, that's just different sections. I've broken it up by types of coffee. So you have cup of Joe, you have latte, and you have cafe cubano. And it's basically my recommendations of materials in which to have. So cup of Joe being the most basic, having a short bio and a long bio, professional headshot, and then a resume. The latte, you're getting a little bit more advanced. You have your website, you have professional social media, some business cards, and a product in which you're trying to sell. And then an even more advanced step, Cafe Cubano, which would be like a personalized logo, some professional recordings, either audio or video, multiple products in which to sell. But all of these different sections also have blank lines for you to create your own materials or ideas for materials too.
You know, one of the other things, I'm looking at it right now. One of the other things I really like about this form is that for both your CV and your resume, you have in parentheses last updated on what month of what year. Because a lot of times you create a bio or a resume or a whatever, or you don't really think to update it as frequently as you should. So that's a nice little add-on there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So really great resources, buddy. As much as I like to give you a hard time, these are fantastic. Well, and actually, let's continue. I'm going to continue.
Please continue, Lance.
Saying nice things about you, which is going he's going to pass out. The graphics are fantastic. Like the logo is great. You've adopted a color to be your own sort of color and font, which is great. And it's just a nice looking set of materials. So how let's stay with that for just a minute. How did you get those developed?
Well, the designer is actually Austin Boyer.
There you go.
Not ringing a bell.
Too bad he couldn't be on here today.
But also Keenan Fogley, who is based out of Pennsylvania, they kind of have tag teamed my graphics and things that way. So actually most of it I think is done from Keenan, and Austin helps with some of the posters and some of my presentation graphics. And actually in the lecture, it has talking about collaborating with different art forms. So it talks about, having somebody for these different areas. So like I have a list of people that are designers. I have a list of people that are videographers. I have a list of people that help with my professional portfolio, people for photos, and establishing a network of all of those different areas. But this madman looking character actually is sort of based around me, because especially at Peabody, I was known for always having a pencil behind my ear, because I would just, whenever I had an idea, I would jot it down somewhere. So I'd have like a notebook or something. So whenever I would just have a crazy idea, I would write it down and then reflect on it later.
I'm an idea factory, guys. I need to be ready to write it down at any moment.
Well, there goes that being nice trend that we apparently.
Well, it's funny because I was going to actually say something nice about that too, but I'll just leave it go. I'll jump in. No, because how many ideas have you let just sort of go because I'll remember this?
Yeah.
And you just don't.
That's incredibly self-aware of someone that is still in college to know that you need to be capturing all that stuff in real time. So, yeah.
You know, Mitch Hedberg, he was a stand-up comic, died a while back. He had this fantastic joke, which was sometimes I think of something funny. And if the notebook is on the other side of the room, I have to convince myself it was not that funny.
If anyone out there doesn't know Mitch Hedberg, I beg you to go. He was a genius. He was a genius.
Oh, hey, while we're stopped, because I stopped us. Here I have developed a theory of technological prowess as it relates to age. Mm-hmm. Are you ready?
Don't sound so excited, buddy.
I don't know what I did, but all of a sudden my phone started talking to me. Well, actually, perfect. This is as if on cue. That's awesome. All right, so my theory is... Well, here, you tell me if this holds or not. So I believe that starting somewhere in the age of 10 to 15 years of age, your ability to manipulate and master technology is related to the inverse of your age on a scale of 1 to 100. So if you're 15, you got an 85% chance of making it happen. And then every successive year, you got a 1% chance less of making something that you want to have happen. And I'm 51. So I've told my students this at CMU, and anytime I'm struggling with the projector or with the whatever, they're like, "Hey, it's working pretty good today." So,
Hey, that's pretty good.
it's not bad. So hold on to that. That's a little something, a little value add from me to you people.
I love it.
That wasn't even just for our Patreon patrons. That was
that's just for
anyone,
everybody.
even
I
at the
just decided
$0
that's
level.
important enough that we need to share that with the world.
There you go. Well, I think it's just awesome that you've taken this concept for the entrepreneurial student, and that it's got a name and it's got a logo and you got handouts, and I mean I think that's it's really impressive. It's probably pretty stupid that you also, like me, named your thing after a word that like no one can spell.
Yeah. This person knows how to spell this. They must be an expert.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't need your tutelage. If they can already spell that word, then they've probably already got all their ducks in a row. But no, it's great, and I just it's pretty cool that and you've been entrepreneurial since the day I met you. I mean, and we approached you and Austin about being interns, and that was for a reason. And you were our first ones. You were in the wave of the first ones, and it was. But it's just cool that you just keep on pushing everything forward constantly, which is great. How old are you now?
27.
Jeez, yeah, you are getting a little long in the tooth. So, yeah.
You got a 73% chance of making something happen with technology.
Yep.
So, tell us about Dallas Brass.
Oh yeah, it's been a blast. I grew up listening to the group. It was actually like the first, I guess, like classical or instrumental CD that I owned. That was given to me by my high school band director, and I just was so amazed at because it was that, and then Boston Brass followed it, and then just Canadian Brass, and hearing, what was actually possible in this idiom, and now I'm in the group. It's idiom. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm sensitive.
Yeah. So
how often is my legacy mentioned in rehearsals?
Well, I bring it up every rehearsal.
And boy,
just to keep it fresh. Yeah.
I was in for a full 7.5 months, but it was a very influential I'm told it was a very influential 7.5 months. So when did you get in the group?
This is my second season. So I auditioned, not this past August, but the August prior, is when I had the audition for the group, and then started touring with them that October.
And what did your audition look like?
Well, I think it's actually pretty interesting, and I guess it's fair to say, it's more of the behind the scenes stuff. But some people will say, I didn't know Dallas Brass was having an audition because it wasn't posted on Last Row or Musical Chairs or Audition Cafe. And the reason is because they're not looking for just a great player. They're not interested in listening to somebody behind a screen. They need to meet this person, and they need to know this person. They need to know and see how they operate, how they communicate, things like that. Because, I mean, even in your short stint, you're aware, just like a lot of the other groups, that you're not just playing music at a high level. You are teaching young musicians, you're engaging with audiences, you're being charismatic on stage. And that's not going to be seen or heard behind a screen. So when auditioning for the group, it was based on recommendation. So either members of the group, previous members of the group, or people that just know the group really well are putting forth suggestions on people. And I met Juan Barrios, who's the horn player, a number of years ago when we were playing with Rodney's group, the Philadelphia Big Brass, and we stayed in touch, and he was always an advocate for me. So I reached out afterwards with my resume, and they said, we need you to send video recordings of these excerpts. And the reason is because they want to see, if what you look like when you play. Are you just very stern looking? Do you look angry at the instrument? So video recordings that way. And then the next round was an additional video. And then I was invited with a small group of people to audition in person. And the first hour was playing playing the excerpts that they had sent before, and then just sight reading new things, and receiving suggestions on like, you know, how to play it, but also like how to look when playing it. So like, you know, can you walk from here to here? Can you play this in like this sort of style? And then the last hour was an interview. And it wasn't an interview like when was John Philip Sousa born, but it was an interview of like, you know, you're coming into a school for one day and you're in a clinic with students. What is the most important thing that you make sure you teach them? And sort of, you know,
Trumpet.
things like that. So really getting to know the musician, really getting to know the educator. And I think also in my interview, I was very, not concerned because that makes it sound bad, but I was very, I guess, interested in the future of the group also. I mean, like, Dallas Brass has a legacy in the brass world, but I was also like, this is great. There's so many great things that have been done. This is what I would love to see happen. So I was already thinking of what I could be contributing in addition to just trumpet. So it was a 2-hour audition process. And yeah.
As a lesson to young musicians who might want to be in a band like Dallas Brass or Boston Brass or something like that, where they're looking to get hired by somebody, Lance, when he auditioned for Boston Brass, and I've shared this on the podcast before, and I've shared this on TEM before as well, but when he's one of the, Lance, cover your ears.
Hmm?
He fell asleep.
Lance is one of the best brass players in the world, but we had an opening on trombone, not on euphonium. You can open your ears now because now I'm going to say not nice things about you. As I've said before, we had 3 finalists and who flew out to audition for us, and the other 2 were excellent. They would have done a great job. Lance started playing the trombone 6 months before his audition, which is a true story. We knew that we were probably going to be having a trombone opening, and JD told Lance that JD Shaw, our horn player at the time, said, Lance told him that there might be an opening, and Lance said, you guys should hire a euphonium player, and JD said, you should learn how to play the trombone. And Lance said, okay, and that was in November, and our audition was in, I guess, the beginning of June, so this was, the end of November to the beginning of June. It was like 7 months, and Lance was like shockingly good at the trombone for needing to learn what the positions equated to in November, but he was by far and he still never quite grasped what was past 5th, but it was close. But
there's positions past 5th?
Yeah, it's all the way. Yes, 8, 9, and 10 are hard. They involve like the trigger. But anyway, he was by far the worst trombone operator, and again, one of the best. I mean, his euphonium playing is like frustratingly refined. Is how I will put that. Frustratingly refined.
Hey, that's the name of my memoir.
You should put that at the top of your bio, man. That's good.
Frustratingly refined is going into the show notes.
Also attribute it to the New York Times, and just no one's going to check up on it. But so not only was he an impeccable euphonium player, but and his trombone playing was like shockingly good for how short a period of time he'd been doing it. But his interview absolutely blew our socks off, and it was exactly what you just said, buddy, which is that he had a clearer vision for the future of Boston Brass than Boston Brass did. And I mean, like financially, and not that he had an inside look in our books, but he was talking about how to differentiate ourselves from the market, about like increasing our price point, about like there was a lot of things that he talked about with specificity, which we asked him to do that, by the way, and it was like we couldn't afford not to hire him. So it was like we were hiring a business consultant as well as someone who was going to be amazing on the mic that we were all friends with and whose euphonium playing was world renowned and the trombone playing was coming up fast behind that. So it's interesting that you say that you mentioned the future of Dallas Brass as well. I'm sure that had to have left a strong impression on Mike Levine on the boss.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of this stuff, another component of my audition, but also I think important for all auditions, is there were 2 trumpet openings at this time. So I did my audition, and then I got a call later that night saying that they'd like to offer me one of the spots, and I said yes. And they were like, "Do you want to think about it?" And I said no. So I was like, I want this. And they were like, "Okay, great. Now you're in the group. Here's the thing. We need you to come back tomorrow morning and play with the other two people that we're considering for the other position." So
look at you. You were like first place. Fancy pants, man.
I tell, because Garrett Klein is the other trumpet player, and they asked like how long we've been in the group. I was like, well, Garrett and I both entered the group at the same time, but I'm technically 14 hours older.
You're like the first twin to pop out, so you call him your little brother. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I like it.
So I played with both trumpet players for about an hour, both with some of like the trumpet featured pieces like You and I, which is our duet, and then William Tell that we play, and then Neapolitan Dance, which goes back and forth, but then also just sight reading a bunch of pieces. And played with the first candidate. It was fine. It was great. And then Garrett came in, and I remember we were doing Neapolitan Dance first. Beam, and then we switched. And I started, and then right before Garrett was going to come in, I looked over, and he was already looking at me. Like, he was already like, "I'm locked into you. I've already like learned how you're articulating this." And then he played it, and I was like, "This is going to be so easy. It's going to be great." And then there was also a moment where Mike and our manager at the time had left the room, and they're like, "Okay, we'll come back and we'll play these tunes." And they had given us the tunes, and they were like, "Decide who plays what." And Garrett is really great at saying like, "Okay, I think you play this really well. I think you should play first on this." And then like, there's no ego. There's no ego with Garrett. There's no ego with the trumpets in Dallas Brass. And it's always about producing the best product. And in this case, it was for an audition. Like, I already had the job, but Garrett was auditioning for the job, and he's like, "Let's put ourselves both in the best position." So the point I'm trying to get across is, no matter the job, it's how well can you play with others? How well can you play with other people? In chamber music, it seems like, well, yeah, of course, but also, for military band auditions, usually like the final rounds is playing with the section. And then, even for like orchestra auditions, the people on the committee are not just that instrument, but other people in the orchestra. And it's like, how are they going to fit into the sound that we have as an orchestra? So it's not just how well you play, but how well you play with others.
There you go. Look at you getting, see that spiritual giant, man.
Insightful, wasn't it?
That was pretty good. Speaking of spiritual giants, we need to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece.
No artist.
You can find out more. That is not the artist model, because he's not an artist. He plays the euphonium. Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So,
how busy is Dallas Brass right now, Mr. Buddy?
We're about a tour a month. So it's been a really good balance of, I leave usually for one tour with them a month, one tour of my own a month, and then the rest of the month is my teaching load in Virginia, as well as other freelance work, whether it be like with Richmond Symphony or other things in town.
So perfect segue, Mr. Deshler. So how does one balance a schedule as diverse as yours? With you're trying to book solo gigs, you have gigs that the Dallas Brass has, and then you're trying to maintain a teaching schedule, and you also need to balance, plus the performance schedule, and then the organization of all of this stuff. So what's that look like?
Well, I actually do mention in my entrepreneurial student lecture that the entrepreneurial student gets organized, because it is so important, because there's so many moving parts. So one suggestion is put it in your calendar immediately. So as soon as something comes up, even if it's a possible thing, like, hey, we might need you for subbing here, here are the dates, but I'll get back to you. Just put it in your calendar right away. So then you are able to say yes to things easier and faster. You're able to say no to things. And then it's looking ahead a lot. So like, I'm already well into my spring, and I'm like, oh, well, May's kind of light, but March and April are stacked, with stuff already. So looking ahead, planning ahead, and then communicating effectively and communicating well. So like for my students, I try to say, these are the dates that I'm going to be gone this month. So that way they know. So that way it's like, see you next week. It's like, oh wait, you know what? No, I'm not going to be here next week. So staying on top of things that way. And because of Google Calendar, which is like my main source of that, is I'm able to not just see when I have something, but what it is. So it's like, I haven't done the entrepreneurial student in like 2 months. I should get on that. So that way it stays fresh, not just for me, but also for, other viewers and in the market. So it's not just like, a TES reunion tour, like we're bringing the band back together sort of thing, but it stays relevant. It stays fresh. So that way all of the content just looks like it's evolving, not that it is even a standstill at all. Because if it's a standstill, it's often dead.
Well, and so to stay with this thread for a little bit, how do you decide how to balance what we're talking about is a portfolio career, and so how are you deciding to balance that portfolio? How much of let me ask it a different way. How much of this is decided for you by market trends, and how much of it is you saying, I want to have an equal balance between Dallas Brass, performing, teaching, and entrepreneurial student lectures?
I really do think it's about 50-50, because certain things like Dallas Brass, I don't control how busy the group is. But I do have, I do a lot of the social media for the group. So as far as like keeping that relative, so I try to make sure, okay, we're not on tour right now, so I should still try to be making some posts. I should still be trying to do things like that, just so that way it doesn't fizzle out, but it kind of stays relevant until our next tour, when also there's like a big hype for everything. So, but as far as like our bookings and stuff, I don't really control that. Sometimes I suggest some leads in areas in which to go. So, and my teaching schedule is, I technically teach every week. So like I block off specific lesson days, and I don't change that unless I have to. So my students know Tuesdays and Wednesdays I teach lessons, and they know to be prepared for that day. Not just, I'm going to teach Friday today, and then I'm going to teach Tuesday today, because they have their own schedules to work out with school and with their families. So, and then, freelance work that, comes and goes at different times. But I've also sort of learned the system for a particular things. Like I know that Dallas Brass doesn't play in the summers usually, so I need to start booking the summers with more of my own stuff. I know that coming in as a high school soloist usually doesn't work in the fall because everyone is doing marching band. So really like thinking of these trends. January, I think I'm gonna go to Florida. I'm gonna do a Florida tour. Once I do that, well, not August, because school is just starting and it's really hot.
Sure.
So it's like I would love to be in Florida in January. Like,
how can I get myself to Minnesota in late January?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So it's kind of like realizing these certain trends. So it's like often when I solo with high schools and I'm coming in, it's in the spring, because the spring concert is usually like a last final fun hurrah.
Right.
But in the fall they're busy with marching band, and it's a brand new band.
Or it's the transition between marching band and the concert band, so they just don't have time for
and
it.
Then for like the holidays, like, there's plenty of freelance work in the holidays, so you usually don't come in like in December or anything, because there's other work that is to be had. And then early spring is assessment, so they're really busy and obsessed with that. So then coming in as a clinician is usually, and a soloist is usually in the spring. Fall semester is usually good, because they're trying to get kids excited as far as coming in as a lecturer at a college or something, or doing a master class, because that's when everything's not too overwhelmingly busy. Yes, like they're starting the new year, but it's not like finals, it's not midterms, not anything like that. So that's usually a good time.
So it's all intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're listening to this and you want to have a career similar to any aspect of Buddies, you need to be aware of how these systems work? How does a concert season work? How does a university schedule work over the course of a year? How does a high school season work? And you're going to find out that the summers are going to be harder if you're building your brand on school concerts, because you're not going to get anybody to come out consistently in the summers. And so then you develop Fred Brass or Tidewater Brass. Okay, so Buddy Deshler, you're 37 instead of 27. What are you doing? Like, where is this leading?
Ideally teaching at a university, teaching at the university level. There might be a multitude of brass festivals, because I think you guys were there, but it may have been mentioned in my talk with Andrew, that the business of Fredericksburg Brass Institute, what it started as, is now Brass Institutes of Virginia, because then it kind of remains open-ended as far as how many festivals there will be. So doing that, and I honestly, I guess, doing what I'm doing, but just at like a higher level.
Right.
I would love to have had more content produced, either videos and recordings, because I love what I do. I love that I travel. I love that I get to see America. I love that I get to see other countries. I get to teach and work with young musicians, and then I meet many people and many audiences, and hopefully making an impact in the musical community. So it's just continuing that, but just at a higher level.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, that is pretty great. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, man, I hope this doesn't sound condescending, but I'm proud of you. I mean, like, it's incredible how much you've accomplished and how you just are constantly moving forward. And I say I'm proud of you just because I don't tell most guests I'm proud of them. But
I appreciate it.
But I've known you since you were 18, so it's kind of like, I've seen you grow up. I mean, you were like a freshman at Mason when I met you, and you came up to me and were just like, "Hi." So
thank you for being that deep of a voice at 18.
And I was like, sorry, hi. Yeah, I was like, can I help you? Yeah. I'm not sure how I'm going to monetize this interaction, so you should probably move along. But no, I mean, you were just you were a wide-eyed freshman, and now you're mentoring other freshmen, which is pretty cool for somebody that's 27 years old. So
yeah, I'm having a good time.
Yeah, good. Well, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. So very quickly, I wanted to I don't know how I missed this because it's from May. We're about to get to your advice for our dear friend Jens. But Lance, I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was a review that someone left us on iTunes. This is from May 24th. I don't know how I missed this, but we're up to 132 ratings, which is awesome. We've got 4 5-star reviews. Yeah, and the rest are all 1s and 2s. No, we have 130 5-star reviews, and we have 2 4-star reviews, which is awesome. The best way that anybody can help get the podcast found is by leaving us a rating and a review on iTunes. That helps the algorithm of like every app, everything to when people search for Brass Podcasts. So, or sharing an episode with a friend. But this review from May 24th is from the name is Wilfred the Ding Dong Ditcher. No, it gets better. It is a 5-star review, and the title is "Screw You Guys." and then the short and this is our people. Yes, is she or he is our people. It then says the review is, I spent 4 hours trying to beat my friend's high score in Pac-Man while listening to you guys, thinking it would give me the competitive edge. It didn't work. I now think less of both of you. # pray for Jens. Oh, I love it. And it says 1 out of 1 listeners found this review helpful. So a big shout out to Wilfred the Ding Dong Ditcher.
Thank you, Wilfred.
Yep, thank you. If that's even your real name, Mr. Ditcher. But anyway, the Pray for Jens is segueing beautifully into I know that you know Jens quite well. I know that you went to Banff and that you've studied with him. But as you know, Jens is just going through some really heartbreaking jaw problems of late, and not really, but we like to make it sound like that. So, can you give give him advice? You speak directly to him. He subscribes to the podcast. He emails us within 2 hours of every episode releasing, saying with details, saying how much each episode meant to him. So, what advice would you give to our dear friend Jens Lindemann in this real time of need?
Try the saxophone.
Concise.
It is concise because it's easy, or what?
I think it's just something new. Clearly, things just aren't what they used to be. So I think just kind of it's never too late to start a new path.
Yeah, I see. You're tapping into Seth Godin here when he opens the dip with saying the Vince Lombardi "winners never quit and quitters never win" is the worst advice that any human's ever given anyone. So so quit the trumpet and then take up the saxophone.
Saxophone, maybe get into the culinary arts a little bit.
like wedding cakes.
Pretty good.
You can tap into your same network of people, but with a new product in this case. So I think some beginner saxophone solos, a good hollandaise sauce, flood the market with some new content and some new products, and I think that'll keep everyone engaged and dismiss the fact of whatever's going on in trumpet land. So.
It has been years now. Maybe you should make maple syrup, right? Tap some trees.
Wait a minute.
There we go. Well, that's good, man. I like it. So take up the saxophone and make hollandaise sauce. That was a bizarre one. I like it, man. There you go. You learn from the best.
I've been watching a lot of this Binging with Babish, this cooking show stuff. So
there we go. I like how you called it the culinary arts. Yeah, that's. Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else that we need to ask this spiritual giant, Lance?
No.
All right. For all of you Patreon patrons, which you can find out more at patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, then we are about to record in about 30 seconds. We were going to record the bonus episode with Buddy, which will come out exactly 1 week after this for our patrons only. And thank you so much to all of you for listening. Buddy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your heavy prayer schedule to and your charitable endeavors to join us today. It's been great.
No problem. Can I actually say something regarding the Patreon stuff?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I am also a Patreon supporter.
That's right. Yes, and, I said I forgot that he was, and he said I can listen to my own voice, and I said, "Oh, you're a Patreon patron," and he said, "I give you guys $12 a month. Screw you."
But it's great because it keeps this content producing. It keeps Lance and Andrew off the streets.
Amen to that. Testify,
yeah, brother.
So I highly encourage everyone to join me in their Patreon support.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man. See, if you had said, could I say a word about helping you guys get more money, I would have been like, take all the time you need.
All the time you need.
Yeah, no, that's why I needed to see the true Andrew and Lance. So I didn't.
Notice I said quiet.
Yes. Yeah, Lance was the one that could actually sense what your awareness is overrated. People can, and these are always linked in the show notes, but people can find you at buddydeshler.com. They can find out all about Fredericksburg Brass Institute at fredbrass.com. Where DallasBrass.com, you can find out what he is up to with Garrett and Juan and Paul and who's the name of your new trombone player?
Ryan Christensen.
And Ryan. And who's your drummer these days?
Joel Alexander is our drummer.
Cool. There you go. You can find out more about them at DallasBrass.com and check out the Entrepreneurial Student. That checklist that Lance was talking about is great.
Yep, there's a link to it, as well as the previous times we've had Buddy on one of the shows.
There you go. So I think that is going to do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray4Jens on Twitter and Instagram and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/Pray4Jens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.